Hello, English learners. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of our English Learning Podcast. If you're listening right now, I know one thing about you. You're serious about improving your English and sounding more like a native speaker. And let me tell you, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to reveal 5 powerful secrets that native English speakers use effortlessly, but most learners completely overlook. These are the same techniques that can transform the way you speak, making you sound smoother, more natural, and more confident in any conversation. Now, let's be honest. Learning English isn't just about memorizing grammar rules or studying endless vocabulary lists. It's about communication. It's about expressing yourself clearly and naturally. And if you've ever felt frustrated that your English sounds too textbook or robotic, we're about to change that. Because today, we're unlocking the real strategies that will help you sound just like a native speaker. Are you ready?
I love that, Adam. And I want to emphasize something very important. You don't need to be perfect to sound natural. A lot of learners think they have to master every single grammar rule before they can speak fluently, but that's not true. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. What really makes them sound natural is their rhythm, their pronunciation, and the way they connect words when they speak. That's exactly what we're going to focus on today. So, here's what you can expect in this episode. First, we'll break down the key pronunciation tricks that instantly make you sound more native. Then, we'll reveal the secret to connected speech, how native speakers blend words together so smoothly. We'll also cover the importance of intonation, common expressions, and, finally, the ultimate game changer, thinking in English instead of translating in your head. By the end of this episode, you'll have practical tools you can start using right away. So, stay with us. This is going to be an exciting ride.
All right, let's dive into our first secret, mastering pronunciation like a native. Now, pronunciation is one of the biggest reasons why learners struggle to sound natural. You might know all the right words, your grammar might be perfect, but if your pronunciation doesn't match how native speakers actually talk, something will feel off. And the truth is, most English learners don't even realize that they're pronouncing certain words in a way that sounds unnatural. Think about it. When was the last time you really focused on your pronunciation? Not just reading words aloud, but actually listening carefully to how native speakers say them. English has a lot of sounds that don't exist in other languages, like the th sound in words like think or this. Many learners replace it with s or z, so instead of saying think, they might say sink or zinc, which can cause confusion. And then there's the tricky r sound. In many languages, the r is rolled or tapped, but in English, it's more relaxed. Compare how you say red in your native language versus how an American or British speaker says it. There's a difference, right? These small details make a huge impact on how natural your English sounds.
That's so true, Adam. And pronunciation isn't just about individual sounds, it's also about stress and emphasis. English is a stress-timed language, which means that some syllables are longer and stronger, while others are shorter and weaker. This is something that a lot of learners miss. For example, if you say photograph, you stress the first syllable, pho to graph. But in photography, the stress shifts. Photogra-phi. If you get the stress wrong, even if you pronounce the sounds correctly, it won't sound natural to a native speaker. Here's a great exercise for improving stress and pronunciation. Shadowing. This is one of the best techniques out there. You listen to a native speaker and immediately repeat what they say, copying their pronunciation, rhythm, and even their emotion. It's like becoming their echo. Let's try a quick example together. Listen to this sentence. I can't believe how fast time flies. Now, instead of just reading it, listen to the way I say it and repeat after me. I can't believe how fast time flies. Notice how some words, can't, fast, and flies are stronger, while others like how and time are softer. That's how native speakers naturally speak, You're not pronouncing every word equally. You're emphasizing the most important words. Practicing shadowing for even 5 to 10 minutes a day will transform your pronunciation. Find a podcast, a YouTube video, or even a movie scene. Listen, repeat, and mimic everything, including their tone and speed. Do this regularly, and your pronunciation will start improving without you even realizing it.
I love shadowing. It's a game changer. And speaking of pronunciation tricks, let's talk about minimal pairs. These are words that sound very similar, but have one small pronunciation difference, like ship and sheep, or bit and beat. If you mispronounce them, you might accidentally say the wrong word entirely. Imagine telling someone, "I want to sit," but you say, "I want to seat." That changes the meaning. A great way to improve this is by practicing pairs of words that native speakers sometimes struggle with too. Here's a fun exercise for our listeners. I'll say 2 words, and you try to hear the difference. First pair, bat and bet. Second pair, cat and cut. Last one, hit and heat. Did you hear the difference? If not, don't worry. The more you train your ears to pick up these subtle distinctions, the better your pronunciation will become. A great tip is to record yourself speaking and compare it to a native speaker. You'll be surprised at how much you can improve just by listening to yourself.
Ma, that's an excellent tip. And one more pronunciation secret that native speakers use is linking sounds. Native English speakers don't say every word separately. Instead, they blend sounds together to make their speech smoother. This is called connected speech. We'll talk about it more in the next chapter, but let's introduce a little bit of it now. For example, instead of saying, "What are you doing?" native speakers often say, "What you doing?" The words "what are" combine to sound like "whatcha." This happens in everyday conversations all the time. Another example, instead of "going to," many native speakers say "gonna." So instead of "I am going to eat," it becomes "I'm gonna eat." Here's a quick challenge for you. Listen carefully to native English conversations, movies, or even songs, and try to spot where words are linked together. The more you train your ears to recognize these natural speech patterns, the easier it will be for you to use them in your own speech.
That's such an important skill. All right, let's do a quick recap of what we learned in this chapter. 1. Master tricky sounds like th and r. They make a huge difference in how natural you sound. 2. Understand stress and emphasis. English isn't flat. Some words are stronger than others. 3. Use shadowing. Mimic native speakers as closely as possible. 4th, practice minimal pairs. Train your ears and mouth to hear and pronounce similar words correctly. 5. Learn linking and connected speech. Native speakers blend words together, and so should you. If you apply even one of these techniques, you'll see a noticeable improvement in how natural your English sounds. But if you use all of them consistently, you'll be on your way to speaking just like a native.
Absolutely. And remember, improving your pronunciation isn't about sounding perfect. It's about being understood clearly and speaking with confidence. If you ever feel discouraged, just remind yourself that even native speakers had to learn these pronunciation patterns when they were kids. It's a process, but with daily practice, you'll get there.
All right, now that we've talked about pronunciation, let's move on to one of the most powerful secrets to sounding like a native speaker: connected speech. This is where learners can take their English from sounding robotic to sounding smooth, natural, and effortless. Now, let's think about how English is spoken in real life. Have you ever noticed that native speakers don't say every word separately? If you try to say each word individually, it can sound unnatural. For example, in textbooks, you might read the sentence, "What do you want to do?" But in real conversations, a native speaker is more likely to say, "What do you want to do?" See what happened there? The words, "what do you" became "what'ya," and "want to" became "wanna." This is what we call connected speech, and it's one of the biggest differences between textbook English and real spoken English. If you want to sound like a native, You have to learn how words connect, blend, and change in natural conversation.
That's so true, Adam. And I love how you pointed out the difference between textbook English and real-life English. Most learners spend years studying grammar and vocabulary, but when they finally listen to native speakers, they feel lost. And that's because they've never trained their ears for connected speech. Think of it like this. English is a rhythm-based language, and native speakers speak in phrases, not in individual words. This means words link together, some sounds disappear, and new sounds are added. Let's go over some of the most common patterns of connected speech that will help you sound more fluent instantly. The first type is linking sounds. This happens when one word ends with a consonant and the next word begins with a vowel. Instead of pronouncing them separately, native speakers connect them. Let's try an example. Instead of saying, "I need a apple" with pauses, a native speaker would naturally say, "I need a apple." The D sound in need connects smoothly with the vowel A in apple, creating a natural flow. Here's another one. Instead of saying "go on" with a pause, it becomes "gowan." The words blend together. This kind of linking is one of the reasons why native speakers sound so smooth when they talk.
That's a great example, Sophia. And another super common type of connected speech is sound dropping, where certain sounds disappear completely. This happens in fast, casual speech all the time. For example, instead of saying "next day" clearly, many native speakers say "next day." The T sound disappears, making the speech faster and more natural. Another one is "I don't know," which often sounds like "I dunno" in casual conversations. Here's a fun challenge for our listeners. Try to listen for sound dropping in movies, songs, or podcasts. Pay attention to where native speakers skip sounds or blend them together. The more you train your ears to recognize these patterns, the easier it will be for you to start using them yourself.
That's such a great exercise. And here's another one that most learners don't realize: intrusion. This happens when native speakers add an extra sound between two words to make speech smoother. It might sound strange, but it happens all the time. For example, let's take the phrase "go on" again. Instead of saying it separately, native speakers often add a slight W sound in between, making it sound like "gowan." Another example is "I saw it." In fast speech, it sounds more like "I saw wit." It happens because our mouths naturally add sounds to make transitions between words easier. English isn't just about the words themselves, it's about how those words flow together.
Absolutely. And the last one, which is probably the most famous, is reductions. This is when native speakers shorten words or phrases, making them sound completely different from their textbook versions. For example, "going to" almost always becomes "gonna." Instead of "I am going to call you," native speakers say "I'm gonna call you." Another classic example is "want to" becoming "wanna." Instead of "do you want to go," it's "do you want to go?" And here's a fun one. "What are you doing?" In real conversations, it often sounds like "what you doing?" Native speakers naturally reduce words in casual speech, and if you start doing the same, you'll instantly sound more fluent.
I love that. And here's the key takeaway for our listeners. If you want to sound like a native speaker, don't just focus on individual words. Focus on how words connect. Because real English isn't spoken word by word. It's spoken in chunks, in phrases, in rhythm. Here's a quick 3-step exercise you can try right now to practice connected speech. 1. Find a short audio clip of a native speaker. It could be from a movie, a podcast, or even a song. 2. Listen carefully and write down what you think they're saying. Pay attention to how they link words and reduce sounds. 3. Shadow the speaker. Listen and repeat immediately after them, trying to match their rhythm, speed, and pronunciation. Do this for just 5 minutes a day, and I promise you, your English will start to sound much more natural.
So far, we've uncovered 2 powerful secrets, pronunciation and connected speech, that help you sound more like a native speaker. But now, we're moving on to something just as important: And this is what truly makes native speakers sound expressive, confident, and engaging. We're talking about intonation and rhythm. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever spoken English and felt like your words sounded flat or lifeless? Maybe you've noticed that native speakers sound more dynamic, while your English feels monotone, like reading from a textbook. If that sounds familiar, don't worry. You're not alone. A lot of learners focus so much on getting the words and grammar right that they forget about how they say them. And that's where intonation and rhythm come in. Intonation is all about the rise and fall of your voice when you speak. It's how native speakers add emotion, energy, and natural flow to their conversations. And rhythm? That's the beat and speed of English. It's why English sounds bouncy compared to some other languages. Today, we're going to teach you how to master both, so you don't just speak English, you speak it with confidence and impact.
That's such an important point, Adam. Think about how babies learn their native language. They don't start by memorizing grammar rules. They start by mimicking the sounds, rhythm, and melody of the language. That's why even before they say their first words, they already sound like little native speakers. So, let's break it down. Intonation is how your voice goes up and down when you speak. In English, we use different intonation patterns depending on what we're saying. Let's try a quick example. Listen carefully to these two sentences. 1. I didn't say he stole the money. 2. I didn't say he stole the money. Did you notice how my voice stressed different words each time? In the first sentence, I'm emphasizing didn't, meaning I didn't say it. In the second sentence, I'm emphasizing he, which means maybe someone else said it. The words are exactly the same, but the meaning changes completely just because of the intonation. This is why learning intonation is so important. If your voice stays flat, people might misunderstand you or think you're not engaged in the conversation. But if you use the right intonation, you'll sound much more natural and expressive, just like a native speaker.
That's such a great example, Sophia. And intonation isn't just about changing meaning. It also helps us show emotion. Imagine you're asking a question. In English, when we ask yes-no questions, our voice usually rises at the end. Try this with me. Are you coming? Did you like the movie? But when we ask WH questions, like who, what, where, when, why, and how, our voice usually falls at the end. Where are you from? What do you want to eat? This small change in intonation makes a huge difference. If you don't raise your voice at the end of a yes-no question, people might not even realize you're asking something. And if you raise your voice too much in a WH question, it might sound unnatural. So here's a quick tip for our listeners. Record yourself asking both yes-no questions and WH questions. Play it back and check if your intonation sounds natural. Try mimicking a native speaker, and soon it will start feeling more automatic.
That's an amazing exercise, Adam. And now, let's talk about rhythm, because this is another key element that separates native speakers from learners. English has a very unique rhythm. It's what we call a stress-timed language. This means that in English, some words are pronounced more strongly than others, and the rest are shorter and weaker. Native speakers don't give equal time to every word. Instead, they focus on the important words and reduce the others. Let's take an example sentence. I want to go to the park. Now, in natural speech, we don't pronounce every word equally. Instead, we stress the important words and reduce the others. I want to go to the park. The words want, go, and park are stronger, while to and the are much softer and faster. If you try to pronounce each word equally, your English will sound unnatural. But if you learn to stress the right words, your speech will flow just like a native's.
Exactly. And this is why learners sometimes struggle to understand native speakers, because they're expecting to hear every word clearly. But in real conversations, native speakers naturally reduce and shorten unstressed words. Here's a fun challenge for you. Try clapping or tapping your hand as you say a sentence. Clap only on the stressed words. Let's do an example together. I need to buy a new phone. Now, if I said this like a robot, I need to buy a new phone, It would sound strange. But when I follow the natural rhythm, it flows smoothly. I need to buy a new phone. So, here's your homework. Take a short sentence, identify the stressed words, and practice saying it with the right rhythm. The more you do this, the more natural your English will sound.
I love that exercise, Adam. And here's one more bonus tip. If you want to master intonation and rhythm, listen to native speakers and mimic them. Watch TV shows, listen to podcasts, or even songs, and try to copy their speech patterns exactly. And don't be afraid to exaggerate at first. If you feel silly, that's actually a good sign. It means you're pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Over time, it will start to feel more natural, and soon you won't even have to think about it.
All right, let's quickly summarize everything we learned in this chapter. 1. Intonation is the rise and fall of your voice. Use it to express emotion and change meaning. 2. Yes/no questions usually have rising intonation. Are you ready? 3. WH questions usually have falling intonation. Where are you from? Downward arrow 4. English has a natural rhythm. Stress important words and reduce the others. I want to go to the park. 5. Practice clapping or tapping to get the natural English rhythm. 6. Mimic native speakers. Copy their intonation, rhythm, and expression. Mastering intonation and rhythm will make your English sound confident, natural, and engaging, just like a native. All right. We've already uncovered 3 powerful secrets: pronunciation, connected speech, and intonation and rhythm. But now, we're diving into something that will truly make you sound like a native speaker. And that's using common expressions and idioms. Now, let's be honest. Have you ever listened to a native speaker and thought, what on earth did they just say? Maybe they said something like, it's raining cats and dogs, or break a leg, and you wondered, why are they talking about animals and breaking bones? That's because native speakers use idioms and expressions all the time, and these don't always translate literally. If you want to sound more natural and confident, you need to start using these phrases in your everyday conversations. And don't worry, we're going to break it down in a super fun and easy way.
That's so true, Adam. Idioms and expressions make English so much more colourful and engaging. If you only speak in direct, literal sentences, you'll sound a bit robotic. But when you use native expressions, your English becomes lively, expressive, and natural. Let's start with some everyday idioms that native speakers use all the time. I'll say the idiom, and Adam, you try to explain it. Ready? All right. The first one is hit the books. What do you think this means?
If we take it literally, it sounds like someone is punching a book. But of course, that's not what it means. Hit the books actually means to study hard. For example, if I say, I have a big test tomorrow, so I need to hit the books tonight, it means I need to study seriously. See? If you didn't know this idiom, you might be confused. But now, you can use it in your own conversations and sound more natural.
Exactly. Okay, here's another one. Under the weather. What do you think this means?
This one's tricky. If we take it literally, it sounds like someone is standing under bad weather, maybe rain or snow, but in reality, under the weather means feeling sick or unwell. For example, if you call your friend and they say, I can't go out today, I'm feeling under the weather, it means they're not feeling well. So, listeners, instead of saying, I am sick, try saying, I'm under the weather. It will make you sound more natural and fluent.
Love that. Okay, let's do one more. What does break a leg mean?
This is a weird one because it sounds like we're wishing someone bad luck. But actually, in English, break a leg is a way to say good luck, especially before a performance or a big event. For example, if your friend has a job interview, you can say, hey, break a leg, instead of just saying, good luck. And this is what makes idioms so fun. They add personality and style to your English.
All right, now that we've introduced some idioms, let's talk about how learners can actually start using them. Because let's be honest, if you try to memorize hundreds of idioms from a book, you'll probably forget them. So, here's a simple 3-step method to learn idioms effectively. 1. Hear it in context. Don't just memorize idioms, listen to how native speakers actually use them. You can find them in TV shows, movies, and podcasts. 2. Write them down with examples. Create a personal idiom journal. Instead of just writing hit the books, shall study, write a full sentence like, I have an exam tomorrow, so I need to hit the books. 3. Use them in real conversations. Challenge yourself to use at least one new idiom every day. The more you use them, the more natural they will feel.
That's a great method, Sophia. And before we move on, let's give our listeners a few fun idioms they can use in different situations. Idioms for expressing emotions. Over the moon, extremely happy. Example, she was over the moon when she got the job. Bite the bullet. Do something difficult or painful. Example, I hate waking up early, but I have to bite the bullet and go to the gym. Idioms for everyday life. Piece of cake. Something very easy. Example, the test was a piece of cake. Spill the beans. Reveal a secret example. She accidentally spilled the beans about the surprise party. Idioms for work and study. Burn the midnight oil. Work late into the night. Example, I had to burn the midnight oil to finish my project. Pull someone's leg. Joke with someone. Example, are you serious, or are you just pulling my leg? These are the kinds of phrases that real native speakers use every single day. If you start using them, your English will sound so much more fluent and engaging.
All right, let's do a quick recap of today's lesson. 1. Idioms don't always have a literal meaning. You have to learn them in context. 2. Using idioms makes you sound more natural and expressive. 3. Some common idioms. Hit the books. Study hard under the weather. Feeling sick, break a leg. Good luck, piece of cake. Something easy. 4. How to learn idioms effectively. Hear them in real conversations, movies, podcasts, TV shows. Write them down with full sentences. Use them in daily conversations. If you practice this consistently, you'll start understanding native speakers better and speaking more like them.
All right, Sophia. We've already covered 4 powerful secrets that bring you closer to speaking English like a native: pronunciation, connected speech, intonation and rhythm, and using native expressions. But now, we're revealing something that separates fluent speakers from those who struggle to speak smoothly. This is one of the biggest challenges for English learners: thinking in English instead of translating from their native language. Let me ask you, dear listener, have you ever had a conversation in English and felt like your brain was working too slowly? Maybe you knew the words in your native language, but you had to stop, think, translate, and then speak. And by the time you formed your sentence, the conversation had already moved on. This happens because your brain is still thinking in your native language first. But if you can train yourself to think directly in English, you'll speak faster, more naturally, and with more confidence. And here's the good news. You can train your brain to think in English. Today, we're going to show you exactly how to do it, step by step.
That's such an important point, Adam. A lot of learners don't even realize that translation is slowing them down. But let's think about it. When you translate in your head, your brain has to go through 3 steps. 1. Think in your native language. 2. Translate the sentence into English. 3. Speak the English sentence. That's why sometimes, by the time you finish forming your sentence, the conversation has already moved on. But fluent speakers don't translate. They think directly in English and respond quickly and naturally. If you want to sound fluent, you have to skip the translation step and start processing English the way a native speaker does. And don't worry, even if you've been translating for years, you can train your brain to switch to English thinking.
All right, now let's get to the practical part. How do you actually train your brain to think in English? The key is to start small and be consistent. So, here's a simple 4-step method to help you think in English naturally.
If you're used to translating, don't worry, you don't have to switch overnight. Start small. Throughout your day, look at things around you and name them in English. For example, if you're at home, look at common objects and say their English names in your mind, Chair, table, window, phone, book, shoes, door. When you're outside, do the same. Tree, car, road, sky, dog, bus. The more you do this, the faster your brain will start connecting objects with their English names without needing translation.
Step 2. Think in simple phrases. Once you're comfortable naming objects, take it to the next level. Think in small phrases. For example, instead of just saying apple, think, I like apples. This apple is red. If you're walking down the street, think, the weather is nice today. That car is really fast. At this stage, don't worry about making perfect sentences. The goal is to get used to forming thoughts in English.
Step 3. Describe what's happening. Now, let's make it even more advanced. Start describing your actions in English. For example, if you're cooking, think, I'm cutting vegetables. Now I'm adding salt. If you're waiting in line at a store, think, I'm standing in line. Line. The cashier is helping a customer. This step forces your brain to think in full sentences, and the more you practice, the faster you'll become.
Step 4. Have inner conversations with yourself. All right, now for the final step. This is where your English really starts to flow. Start having inner conversations in English. Imagine you're talking to a friend and ask yourself simple questions. What did I do today? Answer in English. What should I eat for dinner? Answer in English. What's my plan for tomorrow? Answer in English. You can even practice by pretending to talk to someone. Imagine a conversation and play both roles in your head. This step will train your brain to think in English naturally, just like native speakers do.
These steps are powerful, but if you want to make it even more fun and effective, try these quick exercises. 1. Set a timer. Speak in English for 1 minute without stopping. Describe your day, your thoughts, or anything around you. Slowly increase the time as you improve. 2. Use English for small decisions. When deciding what to wear, what to eat, or where to go, do it in English. 3. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Every morning, have a short conversation with yourself in English while looking in the mirror. 4. Use English apps and tools. Change your phone's language to English. Use an English diary, or listen to English music and try to describe the lyrics in your own words.
Let's quickly summarize today's key points. 1. Translating slows you down. You must train your brain to think directly in English. 2. Follow these 4 steps. Step 1. Start with single words. Name things around you in English. Step 2. Think in simple phrases. Describe objects with short sentences. Step 3. Describe your actions. Talk about what you're doing. Step 4. Have inner conversations. Ask and answer questions in your head. 3. Practice with fun exercises. Speak for 1 minute without stopping. Make small decisions in English. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Change your phone's language to English. If you do this every day, thinking in English will become automatic, and you'll start speaking fluently without hesitation. So far, we've learned some powerful secrets to speaking English like a native: pronunciation, connected speech, intonation, idioms, and thinking in English. But there's something we need to address today. Even if you master all these techniques, there are some common mistakes that can still make you sound less natural. And guess what? Many learners keep making these mistakes without even realizing it. That's why in today's episode, we're going to identify these mistakes and fix them together. We'll show you exactly what to avoid and how to correct them, so you can sound smoother, more confident, and more like a native speaker. Sophia, I'm sure you've noticed that even advanced learners sometimes make small mistakes that hold them back, right?
Absolutely, Adam. And the truth is, these mistakes aren't about grammar rules. They're about how English is actually spoken naturally. Many learners have a strong vocabulary and good grammar, but their speech still sounds a bit unnatural because of small errors in word choice, sentence structure, or rhythm. But here's the good news. Once you become aware of these mistakes, you can fix them quickly. And today, we're going to focus on the most common ones that can make the biggest difference in your fluency. All right, let's start with a big one. Direct translation mistakes. Many learners think in their native language and try to translate their thoughts word for word into English. The problem is, English has its own way of structuring sentences, and sometimes translations don't make sense or sound unnatural. For example, a Spanish speaker might say, "I have 30 years," instead of "I am 30 years old. Or a French speaker might say, "I have cold," instead of "I am cold." These kinds of mistakes can make your English sound strange, even if people understand you. Paisparkam.
All right, let's start with a big one. Direct translation mistakes. Many learners think in their native language and try to translate their thoughts word for word into English. The problem is, English has its own way of structuring sentences, and sometimes translations don't make sense or sound unnatural. For example, a Spanish speaker might say, "I have 30 years," instead of "I am 30 years old. Or a French speaker might say, "I have cold," instead of "I am cold." These kinds of mistakes can make your English sound strange, even if people understand you.
That's a great example, Adam. Another common translation mistake is with prepositions. For instance, in some languages, people say "listen music" instead of "listen to music," or they say "depend of" instead of "depend on." So here's the key. Instead of translating word for word, pay attention to how native speakers phrase things. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, and try to imitate real English sentences rather than translating from your native language.
Now, let's talk about filler words. We all use them. Words like like. But using them too much can make your speech sound hesitant or unnatural. For example, listen to these two sentences. 1. I think maybe we could, go to the park or, maybe the mall. 2. I think we could go to the park or maybe the mall. The second one is clear, confident, and natural. The first one sounds unsure and hesitant. Now, Sophia, how can learners reduce filler words and sound more fluent?
Great question. The best way is to practice pausing instead of filling silence with or When you're thinking about what to say, take a short pause, just like native speakers do. For example, instead of saying, I think it's a good idea, try pausing and saying, "I think it's a good idea." It sounds more natural and confident. So next time you speak, practice replacing filler words with a short pause.
Now, this one is super important, speaking with a monotone voice. Many learners focus so much on grammar that they forget to use emotion and emphasis. But in English, intonation and stress are key to sounding natural. For example, if you say, "I can't believe it," with no emotion, it sounds boring. But if you say, "I can't believe it," with excitement, it sounds way more natural and engaging. So, Sophia, what's a good way to practice intonation and emotion?
A great exercise is imitating native speakers. Try watching a short clip from a TV show or movie. Pause after each sentence and repeat it exactly how the native speaker says it. Same rhythm, same tone, same energy. You can also exaggerate emotions when practicing. If you say something with too much energy while practicing, it'll feel more natural in real conversations. So don't just focus on words, focus on how they sound.
Another big mistake? Mispronouncing common words. Even advanced learners sometimes say simple words incorrectly, and it makes them sound less fluent. For example, many learners say develop, develop, instead of develop, comfortable, comfortable, instead of comfortable, Wednesday, Wednesday, instead of Wednesday. So, if you want to sound more native, focus on learning the correct pronunciation, especially for words you use every day.
Now here's a mistake that even advanced learners make. They use too much formal or textbook English in everyday conversations. For example, instead of saying, "I would like to inquire about the price of this item," too formal. A native speaker would just say, "How much is this?" instead of saying, "I am unable to attend the meeting." A native speaker would say, "I can't make it to the meeting." If you want to sound natural and fluent, listen to how real people speak in casual situations and adjust your speech accordingly.
All right, let's do a quick recap of today's key points. 1. Don't translate directly. Learn how English phrases are naturally structured. 2. Avoid overusing filler words. Replace and you know with short pauses. 3. Use emotion and intonation. Don't speak in a monotone voice. 4. Learn the correct pronunciation. Some common words are tricky. 5. Stop using overly formal or textbook English. Learn how natives actually speak. If you work on these areas, your English will sound smoother, more natural, and more confident.